muted because you're.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
You evidently were not keeping things yours.
I wasn't what?
The best is when, like, during the bar mitzvahs, when the two of you are gossiping on the stand, and I have to mute your microphones. Don't turn them on and off, because then I get confused. I feel like. So do you want me? I don't want you. I want you to keep it on, literally.
Today or tomorrow?
No.
Tomorrow.
Anytime we're doing a service, if you sit down, if you stand up, leave it on, and I'll control it. When you
So
sit
are you
down,
controlling it tonight? So I'm out of it. That's so kind of you.
Here's your lunch.
Oh, thank you. Lots of kindness. I appreciate it. This go like this. That's the form.
no.
You want it on the other side.
I want it on whatever side you're comfortable on, but I want it like that. So the
sorry.
light piece is on the top, and the microphone comes out the bottom.
Okay. Let's see how that works.
You don't need to bend it too much.
Already. Okay. I hear it on the guitar. I don't hear the microphone.
No, because Josh is controlling it.
He's controlling it.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Can
shalom.
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
That's the difference between hearing and listening, Cantor, right?
Shabbat shalom, everybody. It's wonderful for us to be together, to feel the Shabbat warmth and love and compassion and all that we need after a busy, busy week. We can take this moment to just take a breath, center ourselves, and be together as a sacred community. And one way in which we gather together as a sacred community is we light our Shabbat candles. And when we light the Shabbat candles, we are reminded of our ability to bring light into the world. So it is my pleasure to invite up Marina Fisher to light our Shabbat candles on page 120.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. What a great thing is to welcome Shabbat in community, to welcome Shabbat in song. We'll invite you now to turn your Sidurim to page 130 for Lehu Nera Nena. We welcome Shabbat. Some of you will be dancing. We'll see. Maybe some of us will be dancing. Lehu nera nena l'Adonai nariya letzur Isheinu nekadma fanav betoda bismirot nariya lo nekadma fanav betoda bismirot nariya lo. Page 131. Shiru l'Adonai shir Hadash shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz shiru l'Adonai baruchu shemo basru miyom leyom yeshuato sabru bagoyim kehodo vechol ha'amim nifleotav yambarai rai 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 yarai rai 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 yarai rai 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 yarai rai 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 yarai rai 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 yarai rai 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 yarai rai rai rai. Shiru l'Adonai shir Hadash ki niflaot ha'asam. We in Shabbat try to take a moment to acknowledge the miracles, the wonders that we have in our routines. We try to focus our minds, to find center in our hearts, and to put aside the things that we recognize shouldn't be with us during Shabbat. It is a tradition, it is a law, not to carry in Shabbat. Now, we don't necessarily follow that law exactly in that way. It's a wonderful idea to try to identify things that we are bringing into this time, into this space, and we don't necessarily want with us. I invite you to take a moment and to think about something that you need to put aside as you try to enter the Shabbat with a full heart, as we try to transform this evening of Friday into an Erev Shabbat. We're on page 134. Adonai Bechino Bekozim Ra Samru l'Adonai Bechino Bekozim Ra Shiurim to page 136 for Mismor LeDavid.
We are reaching this psalm to bid farewell to those 6 days of creation as we prepare to welcome Shabbat. And it's this psalm that evokes the power of God at the act of creation, and it reminds us that now is the time to rest, just like God rested on that very first Shabbat.
Mismor LeDavid, Amul Adonai Benelim. Mismor LeDavid, Amul Adonai Kavod Baot. Mismor LeDavid, Amul Adonai Benelim. Mismor LeDavid, Amul Adonai Kavod Baot. Amul Adonai Kavod Baot. Amul Adonai Kavod Shemo. Amul Adonai Kavod Baot. Amul Adonai Kavod Shemo. Lai, lai, lai. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Lai, lai, lai. Ya la 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 la. Ya la la la. Adonaios, la moitem. Adonai Yevarech et Amo Bashalom. Adonaios.
Bottom of page 137.
Adonai Yevarech et Amo Bashalom. Yai, 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 May God bless its peoples with peace. We turn our Shiurim now to page 138 as we prepare to welcome Shabbat as a bride. The poem Lechadodi is sometimes read as a stairway, and each of the verses of Lechadodi, the sound of children is a great sound. Don't worry about that sound. The problem is with talking adults, right? Like the children's okay. We like that sound in the synagogue. That's beautiful music. So Lechadodi is thought of as a stairway, and each verse is supposed to be like a platform that brings us to the next step. It's in some way an invitation to think about ourselves entering a sacred space, a different space, a transformative space, and to reflect on the steps that we need to take in order to access that space. And on page 138.
Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi ligrat kala. B'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lechadodi ligrat kala. B'nei Shabbat nekabela.
Lechadodi ligrat kala. פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלחם, כי אם מקור עבדך מראש מקדם נשוכה, סוף מעשה ומחשבת תחילה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לא תבושי ולא תקלמי, מה תשתוכחי ומה תהמי, אך יחסו אני הימי, ונבנתה הילה על תהילה. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. If you feel comfortable standing up to welcome Shabbat, you're invited to do so. We try to welcome Shabbat with our bodies. You can remain sitting, you can stand. We turn toward the bride and we welcome its majestic presence. לך דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לי 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 לך דודי, איי 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 לקראת כלה, אליי פני שבת, פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. While you're standing, we'll try to use that for something. So you can walk around and say good Shabbos to each other. If you recognize someone that you haven't seen for some time, go ahead and say Shabbat Shalom. לקראת כלה, פני שבת, פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה.
Shabbat Shalom, Naomi.
Andrea,
so wonderful.
I met him once or
It
twice.
was wonderful. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, ladies.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, thank you.
What are you doing? Oh, very
Now you can be seated, you can remain standing if you like it, and we'll turn our Sidorim to page 140. After Lechadodi, and before we switch into Ma'arif, into the evening service, we pause for one more moment, and we dedicate Shabbat, one more song, one more psalm. We are on page 140 for Psalm 92. Magadlu Masechaya, how wonderful are your acts, your creative acts. And when you look around and when we look at each other, we can recognize some of the beauty of that creation that we celebrate in Shabbat. Page 144 for Hetzikadish.
Amen.
Velma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uchayedecho beit Yisrael bagala bagala uvizman kariv ve'imeru Amen. Mevorach le'olam olam be'havaya yitbarach yitbarach ve'yishtabach yitpar v'yitromam ve'yitnaseh ve'yithadar ve'yitalev ve'yithalal shemei kodesha
Barichu
Leila min kobechata v'shirata
Tushmechata v'nechemata Kamiran ve'alma
ve'himeru
Amen.
Please rise for Baruch on page 146.
We know that Baruch is that prayer in which we're reminded that entrances to holiness are anywhere, but particularly when we come together as a community.
Baruchu et Adonai Amevorach
Seated. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons and arranges the stars in the heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night. ומעביר יום ומהביא לילה, ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי בקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, אמרי ורהבים. אהבת עולם בית ישראל, עמך אהבת, everlasting love you offer your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. And as we get closer to the Shema, our tradition teaches us to focus, to think of the existence of everlasting love in our lives. We're encouraged to find that love in nature, in the idea that this entire universe was created for us, and each of us have different pathways to connect with that love, with that idea. As we get closer to the Shema, I invite you to take a moment to yourself, close your eyes, and to think about what that everlasting love, that unconditional love, looks like in your life. It might be a memory, it might be a landscape, it might be the face of a beloved person. Allow that image, the idea of everlasting love, of unconditional love, become light, and let that light surround you as a shelter of comfort, a talit. And breathe. As you breathe in, let the light of that love enter and take over your system. And as you exhale, once again, try to identify all the energies that you have gathered throughout the week that don't belong to you, that don't belong into your system, and exhale them out. As we ask to become one God, as we come to recite the Shema, try to reconnect with our core, with our own energies. And holding on to that love is that we say, "Bevatcha al tasir mimenu leolamim." Dear God, please never remove your love from us. Baruch atah Adonai, forevermore Israel. Blessed are you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. And for one last time, I invite you to take a deep breath. To become one. We're on page 152.
Shema, Shema,
Israel,
Adonai, Eloheinu,
Adonai, Echad.
Page 154, Mitchell will lead us in the Vahafta in honor of him becoming a bar mitzvah tomorrow morning. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu ha'devarim ha'eleh Asher Anohi Matzavecha Hayom Al Levanecha Vishinantam Levanecha Vidibarta Bam B'shiftecha B'veitecha Uvlechtecha Vaderech Uvshochbecha Uvkumecha Ukshartam leot al yadera v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchtavtam על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, אמת באמונה כל סוד בקיים עלינו, כי הוא אדוני אלוהינו, ואין סולתו ואנחנו ישראל עמו.
Page 157. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. The high heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one at peace, and then we will rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea.
כמוך נגדל בקודש, נורא תהילות נוסף אליהם, נורא תהילות נוסף אליהם, רי 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 מלכותך רבה לך, בוקע ים לפני משה מרים, זה אלינו ואמרו, אוי זה אלינו ואמרו, אי אלי, אלי 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 בוקע ים לפני משה מרים, זה אלינו ואמרו, אוי זה אלינו ואמרו.
מרכיב אדוני יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
Now turn our theory into page 160, as we have recited the blessing for redemption. We now try to find within ourselves the ability to build peace. We have to become shelters, extensions, carriers of that peace. מעתה ועד עולם. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, ועמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, over the city of Shalom, your holy city, Yerushalayim. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת, לדון אותם ברית עולם. The people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages, and to find their ways in every single generation, our way to celebrate Shabbat, to reconnect with our reality, and within our reality, to find rest and connection. I'd like to invite you to turn your Shirim to page 164 for Tfilat Amidah. שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. אתה גיבור לעולם? יהי רצון אמרי בהגיון ליבי, לפניך אדוני, צורי וגואלי. The words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer. So shalom bimroma, we say shalom aleinu ועל כל ישראל, אמרו amen. May the one who makes peace in the high heavens make peace for us, for all Israel, and for all who inhabit the earth. And let us say, we now turn our Shirim, page 371, as we take a moment to think of those that are dealing with illness. We think of those dealing with illness in their bodies. We think of those dealing with illness in their souls. We think of those dealing with addictions, and of course, of those carrying grief. If there is a name that you like to share, someone you're thinking of in this Erev Shabbat, we invite you to bring their names to this space so we can send to them our prayers and our loving energy.
We think of members of our congregation, Richard Kennemer, Jack Long, Don Green-Gorton, Bruce Roberts, Stuart Mass, June Chapman, Mira Engel, Maggie Scardigli, Alfreda Massman, Lori Shakin, Jill Becker, Gail Franco, Richard Ravitch, a former member of Shir Hadash, Lauren Janovich, cousin of Joyce Bodick, Fern Bear, sister of Cindy Gordon, Lillian Sidlow, mother of Beth Sidlow Mann and mother-in-law of Andrew Mann, Mary Sasso, the sister of Chris Sasso, Kate Dameron, friend of Shel Rubenstein, Pesel Bat Anna Sara, Jonathan Stern, son of community member Elle Stern, and Patrick Mayberry, a friend of Joan Pickman.
שלמה, החלמה מהירה, a complete and a fast recovery. Once again, let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Just in case. I've been thinking, since the moment of Lechad Odi, I've been thinking, should I take a detour from my sermon and say something? I will just throw it out there, and you look at that later on. The poem, Lechad Odi, that is so central to Kabbalat Shabbat, to the celebration of welcoming Shabbat, is full of motifs that speak about the nature of this time of the year. We'll talk about what's the nature of this time of the year in 2 minutes. But what I want to invite you to do later on, maybe later on today or next week when you again come to services, and in 2 weeks when you again come to services, let's just come every week and you look at that again and again. Follow the vocabulary of Lechad Odi, and you will see that it's full of motifs that talk about the yearning for a home that has been lost. It's an interesting way to read that. So I invite you and encourage you to do that. Now, tomorrow night, we will count 1,953 years from the event that started the fall of Jerusalem. After a long siege on the 17th day of the month of Tammuz, the Romans broke through the walls of the city. This date commences in our tradition a period of 3 weeks called Bein Hametzarim, between the straits, which accounts for the dates between the 17th of the month of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, the 9th of the month of Av, in which we remember the destruction of the second temple, and the tradition later on says also of the first one. The destruction of the second temple followed by the exile. During these 3 weeks, many Jews all over the world will follow mourning customs in different levels of intensity, going from dedicating some Torah study through fasting, as it is customary in the 17th of Tammuz and in Tisha B'Av, to not celebrating weddings during these 3 weeks. Now, one could ask why it is relevant at all to hold the memory of these events. And I would like to offer 2 ideas why this is always important, and particularly this year. The first one is that our sages recall the destruction of the second temple as an event that was prompted by sinat chinam, unjustified hatred between siblings. While the Romans were those who physically destroyed the second temple, the Talmud chooses to focus on the divisiveness and the tension that existed among Jews at the time. Now, many Jews, when hearing self-criticism, accuse the other side of hating themselves. So they could say the same about our sages. However, is that what's guiding our rabbis' behavior? I doubt it. I believe that the rabbis understood that there was no point in continuing to deal with the Romans, and if they wanted to rebuild a state, they needed to focus on bridging the gaps between Jews. The second reason regarding why remembering these 3 weeks is of utmost importance is because they are the milestone for the loss of our statehood. Zionism, as an idea, is foundational to Jewish identity. It's all over our prayers. And it comes from the peoplehood idea to our religious ideas as one. But Zionism as a political movement was born to address the almost 2,000 years old homeless status of the Jewish people. The thinker Abraham Infeld brilliantly states, only 60 years ago, the noun that most frequently went with the adjective Jewish was refugee. Jewish refugee. The greatness of the state of Israel, irrespective of the mess we are in, is that, stay with me, friends. Do you see me? Stay with me. Bear with me. There's some issues being resolved, just stay with me. So we also make sure that everybody is treated with dignity. So just stay with me. The mess we are in is that it has removed the greatness of the Jewish state, of the state of Israel, irrespective of the mess we are in, is that it has removed the phrase Jewish refugee from the language of the world. This is important to every Jew. You don't come to Israel, he says, just to take a tour of another country. You come to Eretz Israel to tour your soul. And you come here to meet the place that turned your family from being a family of refugees into a family that will never again have a refugee. You cannot remain a people today without a state in which your people are sovereign. Now, this is me, end quote. The state of Israel, as beautiful and important as it is full of complexities. And while its cities are constructions are dazzling, Mia, you just came back. Isn't that amazing? In its 74 years, Israel hasn't yet reached the completeness that we would like for it to have. It's a working process. Following on the steps of our tradition, I don't see criticism against the state of Israel as anti-Semitism by definition. As we said earlier, self-criticism and criticism in general are foundational for building. Or as in the case of Jerusalem, rebuilding sustainable structures. But there is criticism and criticism. The recent decision of the Presbyterian Church to falsely charge the state of Israel as an apartheid state is really alarming. We are aware that this didn't happen in a vacuum. As in his Martin Luther King Day speech, State Clerk Rev. Dr. Herbert Nelson II described Israel treatment of Palestinians as 21st century slavery. There are so many problems with this statement. The first one is that it's false. Israel doesn't have to set of rules for its citizens based on race or religion. It just doesn't. More than that, Arab citizens can be found in all areas of Israel's public life, from the Supreme Court of Justice, through hospital management, to ministers in the government. The second one is that this is dangerous, because it's a dangerous simplification. It is an unfortunate reality that we see happening more frequently. Liberal activists, with whom many of us identify. With them, we are part of them, many of us, and we share in many causes, often take the lens of the perspective of the social and racial conflicts in the United States and apply them to a situation that has a very different background and takes place in a completely different reality. The third one is that an apartheid state, as a system, has no legitimacy to exist. I'll say this again. Apartheid state as a system has no legitimacy to exist. And so, calling the state of Israel the Zionist, the only Jewish state, an apartheid one, implies that the Jewish state has no right to be. Considering that, first of all, the accusation is false, and second, is out of context, then it all sounds, at the very least, opportunistic anti-Semitism. Referring to the 17th of the month of Tammuz, the Jerusalem Talmud says in Masechet Yomah, chapter 1, every generation for which the temple is not rebuilt, it is as though the temple was destroyed for that specific generation. I'm not an advocate for the rebuilding of the temple, just to make it very clear. But yes, of the idea of the rebuilding of Jerusalem as a symbol of the city of wholeness and shalom, as its very name implies. Yerushalayim, the city of shalom. As the prophet says, my house, כי ביתי בית תפילה יקרא לכל העמים. My house shall be, will be, a house of prayer for all peoples, for all nations. The 3 weeks invite us to contemplate the destruction and reflect on how we can build. And they call us to identify the obstacles that prevent us from building. In the generation of the rabbis, it was the hatred between siblings. For our generation, we surely could add peace with our neighbors. The peace we yearn for will never come from the vilification of the other. Peace will come from the ability to, while holding to our own identities, listen and even find empathy in each other's narrative. In this very special time of the year, I found comfort in President Biden's visit to Israel. He said, I am a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew in order to be a Zionist, he added. He didn't say what kind of Zionist or what political or partisan agenda he supports in Israel. We could guess, but he didn't say. He said, beyond those perspectives, beyond all those definitions, I care about who you are, and I want you to be. I want you to exist. What a powerful thing is to say to anyone, and particularly to those we have a conflict with, I care about who you are. I want you to be. Just that. May we escape the trap of simplifying each other's identities. May we escape the trap of reducing each other's narratives to what's comfortable to us and vilifying each other. May we escape the trap of dividing the world to the dichotomy of good versus evil, throwing nuance to the trash of morality. May this time be a time of inspiration to look at each other's faces, to look at each other's eyes, and say, I care about who you are, and I want you to be. Shabbat Shalom Mevorach, my friends. We'll continue our service on page 588 with Be'ash Shevota. We acknowledge that any path to return starts from within our hearts.
Be'ashevota,
Be'ashevota,
El
Elevavecha,
Ki Adonai,
Ki Adonai,
Hu
Elohim.
Be'ashevota,
Be'ashevota,
Elevavecha,
Ki Adonai,
Ki Adonai,
Hu Elohim,
Hu Elohim, Be'ne'emar, Be'ay Adonai, Be'melech al kol ha'am. היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
אחד.
You may be seated. You were sitting already. Stay for a lane also. I never noticed you don't stay for a lane. I always look in that direction. That people stand for a lane. I don't know if you knew. But
We usually do.
But we usually also open the ark, so.
okay. With arco, without arco, we usually stay for a lane. But
Yes.
next time. Next time you stand and we open the ark. We do the whole enchilada. Okay. So at this point, there's we're talking with fellow clergy during this week about the nature of Kaddish. I want to share an idea with you about Kaddish that I want you to keep in mind as before Rabbi PJ invites us to recite Kaddish Avelim. In the structure of the service, we go to somewhere else. We connect with many things. And by the end of the service, we are connected with reconnected with the tangible reality of our lives. And Kaddish somehow helps us do that descent. But a thing that I believe is particularly beautiful about Kaddish, what's the first word of Kaddish? The first word. Itgadal. It's in Aramaic, but the word Gadol in Hebrew means
Great.
big, great. When we say Kaddish, when we are mourners, we acknowledge that something in our universe has been reduced. Our world became smaller. And Kaddish is a prayer of hope. We say It Gadal, we pray that one day we will experience the world in its extensiveness once again. So we pray to open our hearts and to somehow reconnect with the lives and the legacies of those that we have loved and we love so much, and they made our universe great. So with that hope, with the hope of reconnecting with their legacies and once again experiencing the world in its totality, that we recite Kaddish.
If you are in a period of Shiva, those first 7 days, and you are observing Shiva at this time, I invite you to rise and say your loved one's name. If you are in a period of Shloshim, those first 30 days, I invite you to rise and say your loved one's name. If you are observing a yahrzeit on this Shabbat, I invite you to rise and share the name of a loved one whom you are saying Kaddish for this evening,
Cycle of the
Or
year.
those who've passed in this past year.
or those who have passed over the past year.
We are remembering. Remain standing, please.
Remain standing.
Our congregation remembers.
Our congregation also remembers Linda Sherry, Fed DeCastro, Sherry Skehan, Larry Eisen, Harry Gross, Michael Taub, David Schwartz, Rhoda Freiman, Eliad Foner Lipsitz, Ron Wolk, Tamar Noten, Mimi Levy, James C. Price, Colette Kaplowitz, Rita Smith, David Corman, Jay Guadalupe Chavez, Newt Westergren, Elizabeth Ludwig, Bernard Kennis, Charles Stone, Rima Zaratsky, and Leonard Popowitz. We also add the following names of those loved ones who have died in past years: Marvin Browndorf, Fanny Mantell, Robert Friedman, Ethel Lowe, Lois Goodman, Robert Gordon, Richard Sale, Lorraine Milstein, Irving Stein, and our Dean Joseph Spira. Zechronam Levacha, may the memories of each and every person we have named aloud and within our hearts be for an enduring blessing. We rise together for Mourner's Kaddish, page 598. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Amen.
בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי. בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל. בעגלה ובזמן קרי ויאמרו
אמן.
יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי המייח. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי בקדושה בריחו. לעולם מן כל ברכתה ושירתה. תושבחתה ונחמתה. דמירן בעלמא ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיא וחיים. עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום. עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ויאמרו אמן. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, and may the source of comforts and comfort to all who are bereaved. And we say, Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated.
I didn't grab a thing. So, real quick, announcements. So, tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m., we have the bar mitzvah of Mitchell Fisher. We invite the congregation to join us for this wonderful occasion to help welcome Mitchell into our congregation. Next Saturday is our service in the park at Sanborn Park at 10:30 a.m. This will be with Rabbi Nico and myself, and we invite you to register online just so we know how many people are coming to the park. We have a blood drive on July 31st. Register online. Our backpack drive is going on. You can find more information on that online. And if you like to cook, we are looking for meals to put into our freezer for our caring committee. I think that was
a very complete picture of what we are doing, Canto. And if you have any questions, you can also check our website. We are trying to keep it updated. It's going to be even more updated in the next 2 weeks. So take a look in 2 weeks.
Well, look now in case
and
you need
read
some
our emails.
information.
Read our emails. We can check who is reading our emails. We would like now to invite Tom to lead us, to participate with us in leading Kiddush. And you get a big cup. And an interesting thing I wanted to share, Kiddush is on page
23. 123.
Correct. Okay, so thank you for sharing, Carto. Now, on page 123, and an interesting thing is that Kiddush starts actually on page 122 today, and Kiddush is an invitation to go back to the creation of the world every week. Shabbat is an invitation to go back to the creation of the world. And when we say Kiddush, before saying the blessing over the wine, we read a short portion of Genesis in page 122, in order to remind all of us that the world is not a done deal. It's an unfolding creation. And that we are invited to partner with God in that creation. And that's why we say that Kiddush is a reminder of the creation of the world. We say, Secher lemaseh bereshit during the Kiddush. And we also say, Secher leyetziat Mitzrayim, a reminder of what? Of the Exodus. It reminds us what is the situation, where we are coming from, and also what's the story of our people, so we can look at each other and everyone else in the world with empathetic eyes. Our story is a story of redemption. We're on page 122. Please raise the cup. בערב ויבוקר יום השישי, ויחול השמיים בארץ בכל צבאם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה, ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי, ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. סברי חבריי וחברותיי, you can say לחיים,
L'chaim.
like a serious לחיים.
L'chaim.
Wonderful. ברוך אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן.
ברוך
אתה אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם,
אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו בשבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחי לנו זיכרון למעשה בראשית כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
L'chaim, everyone. I invite you to please rise and please rise. If you are able to rise in your legs, you can do it in your legs. Otherwise, in your spirit, we all can rise. It doesn't necessarily need to happen in our legs. And Tom, I invite you to go quickly to Mitchell because as you go to Mitchell. So, because in Shabbat, Tom, as we raise the cup of joy, we also take a moment to acknowledge our creations. Whether your children are standing here with you or not, you might be thinking of your children, you might be thinking of your parents, of your grandparents. In Shabbat, we take a moment to share the loving words of our tradition that has been shared from generation to generation. We think of the creations that we participate in, and we are reminded that love is the most important element in order to create. We say to our children, Yasimchem Elohim, Kefraim Bekemenashe, Kesara Rivka, Rachel Belea. May God inspire you to be like the loving parents of Israel. We say to all of them, Yivrechechem Adonai Beish Merechem. May God bless you and protect you. Yair Adonai Panav Elechem Bichuneken. May God's light shine upon you and may God be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai Panav Elechem. May you feel God's presence within you always. And may God bless you with its most important gift, the gift of wholeness, the gift of integrity, the gift of shalom. Ve'asem lechem, ve'asem lanu, to all of us, shalom. Adonai os le'amav iten, Adonai yevarech et amo b'shalom. May God bless all its peoples with peace. May God give us the courage and the strength to create that peace. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom. Mevorach everyone. Behasuli mikdash Beshachanti betocham v'anachnu nivarech You keep playing. Wonderful. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Wow. Shabbat shalom.